1, 2, 3.
Welcome, fans, to another edition of Series Insider. I'm your host, Jay Beaman. As you can see today, I'm joined at a roundtable by insider correspondent Tito McGee and play-by-play analyst Drew Xzono Jr. Tito, I think I'm going to start with you. Stage 2 is coming up. We got some good matchups. Who do you think's got the best chance to move up the leaderboard?
I think the Blacklist is going to be the best. I like their performance with their 2-1 record. Makazi won against Jeremy Wyatt after a 13-month hiatus. Outcast won in a handicap match against Pierre Abernathy and Alex Castle. Jojo Bravo, even though he lost against Matt Fitchett, looked good. Here's another point. The Blacklist is not afraid of the Ego Busters. They took the fight to them at the end of Stage 1. And they're also playing mind games with the Ego Busters with their unknown fourth man. Now the big main event is Jojo Bravo versus Gary Jay. Jojo Bravo can surprise a lot of people. He thrives under pressure. He's the underdog, and he can pull out an upset against Gary Jay.
Well, I really can't disagree with you on that. As we noted in our broadcast, when they were at 2-1, it was one of those things where I think you kind of saw the cohesiveness of a unit, and I think it's hard to disagree with some of Tito's points in the fact that when you have a unit and a mentality in such a team-based series of matches that you're going to be going through with all these stages as you get to the championship, if you can unify as one unit, and that's what we saw, they were with each other in their ring entrances. That's the one thing you didn't see from the other teams, is you saw them out there with one another when it was really came down to the wire, and that's going to be important. So it's very hard to disagree with some of your picks.
Like Tito said, the big main event, Jojo Bravo, Gary Jay, one-on-one. At Stage 2, August 9th, first place is going to be on the line, possibly, in that match, as the Blacklist and the Ego Busters, only one game, only one match separates them. Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you. Outcast, like we talked about, is going to team with Makazi to take on Dan Walsh and the Rebel Jeremy Wyatt. Drew, the Ego Busters signed Jeremy Wyatt. That provides us with a rare rematch of sorts. Makazi, Wyatt, they're going to be on opposite sides of the ring. What's your take? Who do you got in Stage 2?
I think it's an easy pick, and I think it's something that, unfortunately, if you are a fan of sportsmanship in wrestling, it's going to be hard to deal with it, but you have to take the Ego Busters in that match. And I think the tenacity that you saw from Wyatt in our main event from Stage 1, as Wyatt really just worked on that rib cage and that lower back area. So you have to question how Makazi feels. I mean, it's been a while since Stage 1, but those kind of rib injuries and those midsection injuries can linger for a while. And on the on the Ego Buster side of things, you look at Wyatt, and he's clearly the best wrestler maybe in the organization. He collects championships like they're collectible dolls on his wall. And I think that's one thing that you're going to kind of look at and see. He just recently won the 3XW championship. I mean, these guys are coming in here with champions. The Ego Busters and Greg Jovi, as much as despicable as he looked in that first stage, I think he knows what he's doing. He has had so many years of experience in St. Louis area with all of these wrestlers, and he's seen all of these wrestlers both on his team and on the other teams. And when you see these top two teams come up, it's got to be the Ego Busters. You just can't disagree with, and argue with their success. And on the other side, the Blacklist, who's their fourth guy? And it's a tag team match. And this one, he might not play a factor, but as we saw at the end of Stage 1, Ego Busters aren't afraid to come and attack you at any point in time. And could we see some outside interference? Obviously, Joey's going to be at ringside again, showing off maybe this time a purple tie and a purple shirt. But he's got the best talent. He's got the best wrestlers. It's all about the Ego Busters.
Guys, aside from the referee, I probably had the best seat in the house at Stage 1, ringside, camera in hand. I don't think the 0-3 record of the Resurgence reflects their talent level. I think Kennedy looked great. Stage 1, match of the night, Kennedy, Gary Jay by far. You saw it as well as I did. He had the pinfall. He had that match won. He took a beating, kept fighting. he's been out of action for quite a while. Has a couple matches under his belt, but still got a little ring rust, but he looked great. He was fantastic. And on top of that, he's reloaded his roster. That was another little bit of a problem. Bolt Brady suffered an injury, so he's not going to be at stage 2. Billy McNeil had a family emergency, couldn't be there. Rocket Mapache, great effort on his part, but he had 2 matches in one night. Nobody ever wants to face those odds. So Rocket's going to be fresh. McNeil's going to be there. And really, the big game changer here is Jake Durden. Big man, experience in Japan, getting a lot of looks from a lot of big players in professional wrestling. He is a force to be reckoned with, and he is on the resurgence. Last point, when you're 0-3, when you're a wounded animal, your back's against the wall, you've got nothing to lose. They're 0-3. If they lose, if they have another bad showing at stage 2, they're gone. They're eliminated. They're not going to get into the championship. So they're going to come out swinging. They're going to fight their hearts out. Kennedy looked great. Mapache's got great moxie. Great kid. Durden, big game changer. I really think they're going to have a good showing at stage 2. It's going to be a totally different story than stage 1.
I have to agree with you, and Durden, I think, is the game changer in this instance. And I had an opportunity to hang out with him in Waterloo and kind of pick his brain a little bit about what his wrestling life and his career is, since we haven't seen him yet in PWCS. And he just an imposing, dominating figure. And that could be a game changer for them. It really could, because when you looked at him before, physically wise, and versus the other guys, they were a little bit smaller, especially when you looked at the ring. And it's not all about size, but there's a way when you can have a big brute that's 6'5", 6'6", who can come in there and dominate for you. And when you need a match that's won, there's maybe no one better to have than a 6'6" monster with a big old beard that's going to come there and just smack you with his forearms and smack you with clotheslines. And as you said, someone who's trained overseas. So the resurgence, we are still very early in this. Stage 1 probably set the tone, I think, for stage 2, as I said with the Ego Busters. But as we go into stage 2, you cannot sleep on anybody. There is just too much ground that can be made up here this week. And next thing you know, the Ego Busters could be 3-3, and then the Resurgence could be 3-3. We are still to the point where all it takes is one stage to flip your season around.
Tito, one last question for you. Drew X, I'll ask you right after that. Does anybody see Team Anarchy faring any better at stage 2 than stage 1?
I don't think so. It's like with the match of Outcast versus Pierre and Castle. There was miscommunication. There was a lot of disorganization, and that's what led to their loss at stage 1.
Drew, what do you think?
You can't disagree with that. Again, I think we all sound like we're agreeing with one another, and that's what you get, because we all saw the same thing. We're not here trying to argue about this, I think, too much, but it's what we saw from that tag team match could spell doom in that handicap match. Outcast is a tremendous athlete, and I think you saw his determination and his grit, and he really didn't have a point where he was dominating in a 1v2, but they had a 1v2 where they could tag out, a 1v2 where they could have stayed fresh, and all it took was one maneuver for those two to collide in the middle of the ring between Castle and Abernathy, and then next thing you know, they are reeling, it takes a roll-up, boom, they're down by 1. And that played into their mindset, and I think their mentality for the rest of the night, and then they have to rely on a fill-in who is now joined, he as a fill-in, he was possibly the most talented member of that team, and now he has joined the most talented team. They're really behind the 8 ball right now, and I think the Resurgence has a better chance with a nice new fresh roster, as we mentioned, with Rocket and with Durden to come in and really make noise, whereas Anarchy, they could just fall right on the wayside and then all of a sudden see themselves, I think they might end up being 1-5. And that's going to be a huge, huge problem for them, unless they can figure out this coordination, unless they can figure out teamwork. They've had plenty of time to work on it, but as we've noticed, it's even if you're in there by yourself, there's that certain presence of having a team. And what you're seeing from our top 2 teams versus our bottom 2 is you're seeing the cohesiveness of 2 well-oiled machines.
Also, what you need to realize is that not only in-ring, but out-ring with the whole Evangelistico thing and where his whereabouts was, you need to also get your team coordinated on the outside of the ring as well as inside the ring.
People thought they were the number 1 seed. Davey Vega, Matt Fitchett, Evangelistico, Pierre Abernathy. People saw 4 very talented wrestlers. Things are falling apart for them, it seems. Can they turn it around? We don't seem to think so, but maybe they'll surprise us at Stage 2. River's Edge Bar and Grill presents PWCS Stage 2, 7 p.m. on August 9th at the Tri-City YMCA in Granite City, Illinois. Doors open at 6:30. Reserve your tickets now for only $10 on Facebook or by email. Or purchase tickets at the Tri-City YMCA or at Game Busters on Madison Avenue. Join us August 9th for Makazi and Outcast versus Dan Walsh and Jeremy Wyatt. The Submission Squad versus Stephen Kennedy and Billy McNeil. Jake Durden versus Davey Vega for the first time ever. And JoJo Bravo versus Gary J. We'll see you at Stage 2.